from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. I am blessed to be here with you. We're live, we're national, and here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Man, just a couple of days off, right, and a weekend, and you get hit with so much stuff. This 5 new polls, right? 5 new polls that come out. Now, is it interesting to you? It's interesting to me, right? Usually when you see 5 polls come out, that's because there's an election. Now, you can say, well, come on, Rich, there's 5 polls coming out because it's 100 days. And of course, they're going to measure the president's performance. I would agree with that. I would have thought they would have maybe brought them out, previewed them or whatnot, but that's okay. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. But 5 new polls that want to say that El Trumpito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president and 47th president of these United States, is underwater. And I have to ask myself, I tend to talk to a lot of people, and while I'm not a pollster by any means, I have to ask myself, haven't we seen this before? Didn't somebody, these same polls, the New York Times, CNN, and others, didn't they all tell us that Hillary Clinton was going to win in 2016? Didn't they all have, at one point, Kamala Harris up? Didn't they all have, say, Trump might win 1 or 2 of the swing states? Weren't they all wrong? Didn't Trump win in 2016? Didn't he win again this time around? And just last week or 2 weeks ago with the tariff strategy, we saw that then too. They said, oh my gosh, the tariff strategy. The Daily Mail put out their report on the poll, and they said this is actually beneficial to Trump. He's skyrocketing with the poll. But lo and behold, you've got all these others saying that Trump is in absolute horrible shape. Nobody likes El Trumpito. But isn't it interesting? The people that get this right every single time, John McLaughlin, who's the president's pollster. Now, you might say, well, no. The problem is if he's working for Trump, he's making polls favorable to Trump. It doesn't matter if they're favorable to Trump or not. It's whether they're accurate or not. And McLaughlin gets this stuff right. Last I checked, his guy Trump won. So when McLaughlin says that the real number is 50%, that sounds right to me. When you have everybody else saying things, not so much. Now, you look at some of the questions they ask on this poll. Who do you trust more to protect the rights and interests of the American people? First person on the list, Trump. Second group, Congress. Third, the federal courts. Fourth, not sure. Who do you think wins that across the board? You've got, pretty much. Let me see. He wins across the board with, in most categories. Actually, there's one group that thinks the federal courts is what should be trusted, 38%. And that's other. But when it comes to Democrats and Republicans, it's overwhelming, 73% for Trump. So I think this is a interesting dichotomy. The question is, Trump did win, right? Right. So don't you think it would be a good idea to poll people that actually voted in the election? Likely voters, real likely voters, not just people that are registered voters, right? Because if you didn't vote in the election at all, whether you voted for Trump or not, at least vote in the election. And that's how they pull these scams off all the time, right? They're constantly doing registered voters versus likely voters. Or they'll have a sample size that's only 20, 30% of people that voted for Trump at all when Trump won a majority. So wouldn't it make sense to make it a realistic sample size? I think so. Many of them don't even interview 1,000 people, which is a fair enough sample size. But I digress. None other than CNN's very own Harry Enton, right? You've seen Harry Enton do this time and again. He's a CNN guy. He's the senior data analyst at CNN. Harry Enton goes on to look at these polls, and oftentimes he's correcting people like Laura Coates and others who are saying Trump is underwater, Trump is underwater. But in reality, he points out Trump's doing better than he's ever done, especially when he compares himself to himself. Listen to this.
I think there was this concern among some folks that Donald Trump would come in for a second term and kind of be a lame duck. He ain't no lame duck. If anything, he's a soaring eagle. What am I talking about here? Let's talk about Trump executive orders in 2025. He's already signed 111 so far. That is the most at this point in a presidency in at least 100 years. In fact, it's the most in any single year, and we're only in April, since Harry S. Truman in the early 1950s. The bottom line is whether you like Trump or you don't like him, you can't say that he's come in and not try to deliver on what he at least believes was his promises on the campaign trail, and he's doing so in historic fashion.
How are people reacting to and feel about Trump's approach?
Yeah, okay, so Trump's approach here, what are we talking about? Trump's approach to presidential power. I think the American people recognize what he's doing here is completely different. We're talking, get this, 86% of the American public believes that Trump's approach to presidential power is completely different from past presidents, compared to only 14% who believe it is in line with precedent. And we're talking about at least 79% of Democrats, independents, and Republicans. So again, you can agree or you can disagree with Donald Trump, but what you can't disagree with is that he's doing things very differently. I have used the Frank Sinatra quote before. He is doing it, quote unquote, my way, and that is what Donald Trump has done throughout both of his presidential terms, and he's certainly doing that, Kate Baldwin, in term number 2.
That, of course, is CNN data analyst Harry Enton. He's breaking down the numbers, explaining there's a lot of questions in these polls and showing the numbers that Trump is actually pulling out, despite they want to say his overall approval rating, right? And the reality is when you want to make somebody look bad, you can do whatever you want. You can put whatever numbers you want if you fudge the numbers around. If you do a legit poll, like many on this program, Rasmussen Reports, Mark Mitchell's talked about this. Robert Cahaley from Trafalgar Group has talked about this. We've had John McLaughlin from McLaughlin Associates talk about this. These guys are all pollsters that get it right. They got the last election right. They have a track record of getting it right. And they all explain, if you want an accurate sample size, they told us a million times what to do. Go with likely voters, people that have voted in the last 3 elections. Not somebody who just says, yeah, I'm a registered voter. That doesn't count. And you can make it count. Just go into any neighborhood that has a bunch of people that don't like Trump, where they voted 70% Democrat, 30% Republican, and you're going to find a very low favorability. You can base your whole poll on that and then take it to the press, take it to the masses, go on TV and say, oh, my gosh, nobody likes Trump. But in reality, just ask people. Go around places. Take a look at things. People are happy with what Trump did. Why? Because Trump said, I'm going to create tariffs. Trump said, I'm going to change the economy. Trump said, I am going to shut down the border. Did Trump do those things? Absolutely. But their discussion with Harry Enton and Brooke Baldwin went on. Listen to this.
Take it a step further. Do the people think he has too much? He's taken too much power.
Yeah, this I think is the real question, right? You can believe that he's doing stuff completely differently, but do you think that he has a little too much power or not? And this is interesting. So Trump's presidential power is too much, the right amount, too little. Well, 47% say too much, but then you get 36% who say the right amount. Then you get 17% who say too little. So you're essentially dealing with a majority of the American public, 53%, who do not say that Trump has too much power. They either says he has too little power or the right amount of power. So the idea, that argument that Donald Trump is, quote unquote, a king, that I don't think holds with the American people. It does hold maybe with 47%, but with the majority of folks, they believe Donald Trump's doing something completely differently, and they don't believe he has too much power, and the executive orders he signed certainly suggest he's no lame duck. He is, as I said at the beginning, a soaring eagle.
Again, that's Harry Enton from CNN. And I want to get into a conversation about Trump's approval, his first 100 days, what's going on at the southern border, and so much more. And we're going to do that straight ahead with former Congresswoman Mayra Flores from Texas. Straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You're the border czar. Can you give an estimate as to how many individuals are in the United States illegally? That's number one, and I'm sure you're very familiar with that number, an estimate. And the second question is, I have a list that the White House put out of individuals, 100 ICE arrests since the beginning of the president's term, and the people are arrested for various very serious crimes: first-degree murder, convicted of rape, convicted of murder and aggravated burglary, sexual assault of a child. How many of the individuals that are in the United States illegally are people like this, really bad people?
Well, first of all, how many illegal aliens I think in the United States? At least 20 million. Here's where'd you come up with that number? We've been speaking about 12 million for 20 years. We know we got 10.5 that we know of came to the border. How many don't we know of? I talked about known gotaways at 2 million. How many unknown gotaways we have? Like between the Big Bend sector in Texas where there's no technology. How many 1,000 people dig across through there? We wouldn't know. We would know now. But, you know, so I would venture over 20 million. But your question is, last count, last I looked, there was about 700,000 illegal aliens with criminal charges walking the streets of this country. 700,000. And that's what we're looking for now.
That, of course, is Border Czar Tom Homan, who's out there kicking butt and taking names. And I want to talk about immigration more from the political perspective. I know there was a lot of law enforcement activity on immigration over the weekend, and we're going to get into that straight ahead with somebody from ICE. But right now I want to talk about the political implications with someone who's a very dedicated mom. She's a woman of faith. She served in the United States Congress. In fact, she was the first Mexican-born woman to be elected to the United States House of Representatives and serving the Rio Grande Valley. And you probably remember her name. We've had her on the show a while back. Mayra Flores, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. So let's get your take on what's going on. I know that you've launched a campaign to run for Congress again. Tell everybody that's listening a little bit about that.
Well, honestly, it's something I feel I'm being called to do with such small majority. In order for us to get President Trump's agenda across, we need a much bigger majority. And a lot of the things that he's doing them through executive order. What we don't want is someone else coming in, hopefully not, but, you know, in 4 years, 8 years, and erasing all the hard work President Trump and his administration is doing. So we want to make sure we have a much bigger majority and make all those executive orders into law, so no president in the Democrat Party 4 years from now, hopefully not, but 8 years or whenever, they can erase all the work that we have done, because the Biden administration did so much damage. It's going to take a lot more than this administration. It's going to take us to win the midterms. It's going to have to take us to win, again, the White House in 2028, and so on, for us to be able to repair the damage that the Biden administration did, because that damage was really profound. I mean, they allowed millions and millions of people to come into this country. And yes, some of those people were good people, but we want the good people to come here the right way, the legal way. And this administration allowed terrorists, drug dealers, gang members, rapists, I mean, you name it, to come into this country, because evil exists and they will take advantage of the weak weakness of this country under the Biden administration, and that just can't happen. So I'm really proud to see that President Trump is doing exactly what we voted for, securing the border. But unfortunately, under the Biden administration, millions came into this country, and we really have to tackle down those that are here in this country committing crimes. Those need to be prioritized and deported immediately. It's just common sense. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. Evil will go and attack you and hurt you. Doesn't matter what your political affiliation. I don't understand why the Democrat Party is so in love with gang members to the point that they will go to El Salvador and fight for them to come back to our country. But yet they don't want these individuals in their neighborhoods. They want these individuals in our neighborhoods creating chaos and crime. Why? Because that's what they feed off of. They feed off of crime.
Yeah, sadly, that's the case.
And we
Folks,
don't want that in our country.
No, who'd want that? We're on with Congresswoman Mayra Flores, excuse me. And Congresswoman, I want to ask you about you take a strong stance on immigration, and you come from the Rio Grande Valley. You were born in Mexico. And for many people, and I'm a Puerto Rican kid from Brooklyn. My parents were born in Puerto Rico, and I've been taking flack my whole life as a conservative for being a sellout, vende raza, you name it. And people tell me that. What type of, heat are you catching for your positions on immigration?
Same, but it comes from people that were born and raised here, They have no idea, they have no idea. They think that they know Mexico because they go to Cabos and, Puerto Vallarta and Acapulco, and they think they know Mexico, right, and the culture. And no, just because you go on vacation doesn't mean you know the culture. So most people that say that are those that live in this country. They don't live in Mexico and live the way the people in Mexico live. They go to Mexico on vacation with their green dollars, yet the people in Mexico, they live off of pesos, and they are victims of the crime of the cartel, the terrorists, because that's what they are, terrorists. They terrorize the people of Mexico. Why would I want what I am so afraid of to come here to this country? I'm forever grateful to my dad that did things the right way. I came here legally, and I want every child to experience that same experience that I did. I don't want no child to go through abuse, rape, just to come here for the American dream. No child, no woman, anyone deserves that. And that's what happens. When you encourage illegal immigration, that's exactly what you're encouraging. You're encouraging rape, because that's what happens to most children, to most women that come into this country illegally. So that's why it's so important for us to encourage legal immigration. It's safe, not just for women, but for children as well. So I'll never understand that. But you're right. I get a lot of that. But these are people that don't know our culture. These are people that were born here. For some reason, they think they're, like, let's say, a Mexican American from here a lot of times tells me that. And I'm like, they're not even Mexican.
Right.
They think they're Mexican, but they're not Mexican. If they go to Mexico, Mexico's not going to claim them as Mexican. They're Americans. That's what they are. You might feel Mexican, but you're not. You're born here. You're an American. So, we need to raise a generation to be proud to be American, because this is truly the greatest country in the world.
Amen to that. Stick with me, Congresswoman. Amigos, we're coming right back. We're going to continue our discussion with Congresswoman Mayra Flores. Check out her website, MayraFloresForCongress.com. And don't move a muscle. We're coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
New developments in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He is the accused MS-13 gang member deported to El Salvador. But we are now learning more about his disturbing background. According to the Department of Homeland Security and police in Tennessee, Abrego Garcia was pulled over in 2022 driving an SUV belonging to another illegal alien who confessed to human smuggling across the U.S.-Mexico border. When Abrego was stopped, that trooper suspected human trafficking because there was no luggage in the vehicle. Also, the individuals in the car reportedly gave the same address as Abrego Garcia's home address. The trooper then reportedly sent information alerting the FBI. Now, Abrego Garcia, you may remember, he's at the center of a legal battle over the Trump administration's immigration policy after being deported last month to El Salvador. Democrats, they are there. They are fighting to have him returned to the U.S. So far, the president of El Salvador says he will not send a domestic terrorist back to the U.S.
That, of course, a report from Merit Street Media on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, that is the accused MS-13 terrorist that everyone in the Democrat Party and half of the Democrats in Congress have been making the pilgrimage to El Salvador to defend him and have him released. I think one congresswoman saying that she wasn't leaving until he's released, and I think a lot of people were happy about that. But I've got one congresswoman that I'm going to say I doubt she's going to make the pilgrimage to El Salvador to lobby on behalf of someone that is A, a terrorist, and B, not even a citizen of the United States. Mayra Flores won a very, very challenging district, making history in the Rio Grande Valley, winning a seat in Congress, and she's running for that seat again. Welcome back, Mayra Flores.
Thank you so much.
Now, what do you think
yes,
about
definitely,
this?
I will not be doing that.
Right.
No, it's insane. I'm like, when I thought they couldn't get worse, they get worse. Like, I mean, just keep it coming. They definitely have lost their mind. There's just no way that anyone would be okay with this. And if someone's okay with, our elected members of Congress and senators going to El Salvador to bring back a gang member that is not a U.S. citizen, that is from El Salvador, I mean, there's just something wrong with you. I mean, just leave the United States of America, please. Do us a favor. If that's the mentality you have, then leave the United States. You clearly do not love, respect this country, and if you think it's better somewhere else, well, then go try it out, and let's see how that works for you.
So many people are saying, but it's not about him being a terrorist or him being anything. It's about the Trump administration usurping his due process rights. What do you say to that?
What rights? He's illegally in the country. I mean, why are they acting like the Biden administration? I mean, they were not deporting enough, but there was deportations into the Biden administration. By the way, Obama...
And a whole lot under Obama, right?
Correct. Obama was the deporter-in-chief. By the way, Tom Holmes was working under the Obama administration and appointed, was the director of ICE during the Obama administration. He had the most deportations any other president had. They are acting like if there was no deportations under the Democrat administration, especially under the Obama administration. I mean, again, he was known as the deporter-in-chief. He had more deportations than President Trump. I don't understand this mentality. I mean, they're literally putting the camera on every deportation, like if there was no deportations before. He was illegally in the country and had a criminal background. Common sense, he gets deported. I mean, even the president of El Salvador agrees, which, by the way, he's the best Latin president. I mean, I've never seen a president in Latin America like President Nayib Bukele. I mean, if we could have a president like Nayib Bukele, in Latin America, in Mexico,
all
it would
throughout
be
South
amazing.
America, sure.
Yes, it would be amazing. I mean, I know Argentina has a great president, but
Javier Milei.
That's right, Milei. But President Nayib Bukele, I mean, I just admire him tremendously. I mean, El Salvador was one of the most dangerous countries in Latin America, and it is now the safest country. And I'm glad he went after gang members, terrorists, and he's taking them all in. And he said it very clear: we will not send back a terrorist. Why would I bring back to the United States? I mean, it's illegal for me to do that. I mean, I just love President Nayib Bukele's response. I admire him tremendously and his leadership, and I'm so glad that he is right by our side and supporting President Trump's agenda, because he wants what's best for his country. We want what's best for our country. And look, Latin America, Mexico's well-being is our well-being, and our well-being is also their well-being. Nobody wants criminals, but we are not responsible to take care of criminals of another country. Everyone is responsible to take care of their own. We have enough of our
Mayra
own.
Flores, let me ask you a question. We're approaching 100 days of the Trump administration, and at this milestone of 100 days of El Trumpito, as I like to call him, I feel like there's a lot of criticism still, and there's always going to be. But my question for you is, Donald Trump carried 69% of the Hispanic vote in his election.
Mm-hmm.
This is an unheard of number for any Republican. Why do you think so many Hispanics voted for Trump when the top two issues were immigration and the economy?
Well, because of that, because of the economy and the border. I mean, Hispanics were hurting tremendously. And under the Biden administration, we were hurting. We were not, and a lot of people were not able to pay their rent, their mortgage, take care of their children, their families. It was hurting their pockets. And we saw it here firsthand, the border situation and how it was impacting us. That's why President Trump won, because he ran on economy, he ran on border security, and we remember what it was like. I mean, they act like if we don't remember that President Trump was our president at one time. You know, he had a first term, and we looked back, and the Hispanics looked back and said, wait a minute, I had more money in my pockets during his administration, and the border was secure. So why not? You know, and honestly, that's why people voted for him. And a lot of people just resonated with his message. They opened their eyes. And I think that's why, for me, what's important and what I would love this administration to do is to have someone speaking in Univision, Telemundo, all Spanish media, telling the Hispanic community that voted for him, that gave him back the White House, everything that he's doing. It's important, because if we don't do it, the Democrats will. And all I see in Univision and Telemundo is Democrats spreading misinformation, instilling hate and fear amongst the Hispanic community. So it's important that we have someone under this administration that is bilingual, speaking in these networks, because, again, Hispanics gave them back the White House. And I did a roundtable of small business owners, Hispanic roundtable of small business owners in Vegas right before the election. And I told President Trump, he sat right by me on my right side, and I told President Trump, I said, we're going to give you the biggest Hispanic support no other Republican has seen. I knew it. I felt it every day. And he said, thank you. Like, he was like, really? Like, in shock, right? And I'm like, yeah, you're about to see what's going to happen. And so for me, getting him reelected was a top priority. For me, it was about saving this country, and this country has given me so much that I owed it to this country. So for me, getting him reelected was my top priority, more than myself. It was,
sure,
we've got to get President Trump back in the White House. And we did that. And now that's why it's so important for us to have even a much bigger majority in the House, so we can make sure that we can make all his executive orders into law, so no one ever erases his hard work.
Now, so many people, I believe, are very happy with what President Trump has done, because he ran on a campaign where he said, look, I'm going to kick people out of the country that are criminal, illegal aliens. We're going to close the border. We're going to be tough on Iran. We're going to be tough on China. We're going to implement tariffs. And everything he said he was going to do, he's doing. And yet the polls, 5 polls came out today or yesterday saying that he's underwater, that he's the least popular president anywhere. And I have to say, I call BS on that, because every turn, people are happy.
Yeah, no, it is. It's bullshit. people are very happy. That's exactly what they voted for. He's doing exactly what he voted for. Not like the other politicians who make all these promises and then they get elected and they're nowhere to be seen. They don't do nothing that they promised the American people that they would do. President Trump is doing everything. He ran on this. We knew he was going to do this, and we're very, very happy with the results. He's done a lot of work. I mean, he's only been in office for 100 days, and to see the impact he's already done, especially in the border here, I mean, it's tremendous. So I'm very proud that I voted for him, that I endorsed him, that he endorsed me as well, and I believe that he needs our support more than ever. But yeah, it's complete. Sorry to say this, but it's bullshit.
All right, Congresswoman Mayra Flores, and in addition to all the BS that the Democrats are peddling, I'm wondering, do you have a couple more minutes? I just want you to be able to tell our listeners, we have listeners all across the country that I think would love to learn a little bit about your story. Do you have a couple more minutes to stick with us and tell your story of why you ran for Congress and why you're running again?
Absolutely.
All right, stand by. We're going to come right back and hear her story, who she's married to, and what makes her tick. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. Rich Valdez keeping you company here on the Late Shift, and we're live and national. And I want to reintroduce you to our guest, Congresswoman Mayra Flores. She made history when she won her seat in the United States Congress from the Rio Grande Valley in Texas. And she won as a conservative Trump Republican, America First Republican, that hadn't happened in forever in that district. And she's been holding the torch and focusing on keeping Trump in office. And I want to bring her back in so she could tell us a little bit about, what inspired her to run originally and why she's throwing her hat back in the ring. Congresswoman, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. Well, honestly, President Trump is what inspired me to get into politics. Prior to President Trump being in office, I was not interested in politics. Yeah. I grew up very conservative, in a very conservative household, but my dad was always voted Democrat. And I remember, being told to vote Democrat. And I remember telling him back in 2010, like, hey, Dad, I looked at what the Republican Party stands for and what the Democratic Party stands for, and you raised me Republican, so why are you telling me to vote Democrat? It doesn't, the values that you instilled in me and that you raised me with don't align with the Republican Party. And yeah, we argued about politics for many years. I would say like 10 years. He was very disappointed when I voted for President Trump in 2016. And by the way, I convinced 99.9 of my family to vote for President Trump in 2016, except my dad. But thanks to the Biden administration, they did such a horrible job that, he's a full-blown Republican right now. But it took a long time for him to realize that I was right, that the values that he instilled in me, that he pretty much raised me a Republican. He just didn't know it. He sees it now. It took him a long time. But yeah, honestly, it was President Trump. When President Trump ran, politics became just interesting for me. Prior to President Trump, I thought it was boring. I thought it was boring. I wasn't really interested in it, but he just started something in me, and then I just saw how South Texas was very uninformed. I saw how the Democrat Party took advantage of that. You know, they want us poor. They don't want us educated so they can continue manipulating us into voting for them. And I saw how they just took advantage of that. And I decided to take it upon myself. I said, why not? Let me get involved at the local level. I was prior a respiratory care practitioner. So after work, I would get involved and block walk, phone bank, and just learn about the local politics, state politics, and federal as well. And when President lost his reelection in 2020, that's what did it for me. I said, I'm not going to just stand here and allow them to destroy our country. I said, I'm running for Congress. And a lot of people told me, but Mayra, you're a respiratory care practitioner. Weren't you born in Mexico? And I said, I Googled it and I can run. I Googled it and I have the qualifications. And let me tell you, when I got elected, the first day, I was like, how did I get here? And then within 24 hours, I was like, how did they get here? I mean, seriously, this position was meant for us, the everyday American that understands the struggle, what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. These positions are for us, and we need more of us. We cannot allow politicians to run politics in this world because politics are important. Very important. Yeah. So we just can't allow a bunch of politicians to run the politics in this country because we matter. The American people matter. So we just can't sit on the sidelines and complain about the process and how corrupt our government is. Right. And, well, do something about it and run. Yes, you can.
Well, you know what? One of the things I think people need to do, just like you did, is if they're not doing it, they need to support people like you that are running. So before we run out of time, I want to make sure you let everybody know how they can make a donation to your campaign and where they go to make that donation.
Please, I would humbly ask for anything that you can donate to our campaign. It's to fight for our country that is worth fighting for. Go to www.mayraflores4congress.com and donate what you can. If you can donate, please share our platform on Instagram, on X, on Facebook. Talk about us. Help us with phone banking. If you live in Texas 28, help us with block walking. There are just so many ways that you can be a part of this fight. You know, if it's not running, like you said, donate. If you can't donate, make phone calls, block walk. But you have to be a part of this fight as well because this isn't just my country. This is your country too and the
Absolutely.
future of your children.
Folks, go to the website. It's MayraFlores.com, MayraFlores, MayraFlores.com, and dig your hand all the way into your pocket. Give whatever you can give if you like what you're hearing and you want to see someone like that representing Texas and the United States in Congress. Mayra Flores, I want to thank you for being here. You're a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless you, too. Amigos, your thoughts, calls, and reactions when we return.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So some of the big stuff that I still have yet to discuss that's been going on over the weekend. Of course, the conclave for the next pope has begun. Pope Francis was laid to rest. President and Mrs. Trump were in attendance, as well as many world leaders. And there was a huge series of blackouts today across the world. Many are saying the United States will be next. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I'm always thinking we're always, a heartbeat away from a grid issue. Dr. Peter Pry always warned about that, and I don't know that anything has been done to change that. So we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. Plus, there was a huge bust at an illegal underground nightclub protected by active duty military people, and hundreds of patrons were illegal alien gang members. We're going to hear about that. The DEA led the charge to shut that down. Big arrests there and so much more. We'll talk about that, as well as your thoughts, calls, and reactions when we return. Hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
All right, America, a little technical action there. Welcome back, America. Rich Valdez. Hi there. Good evening. And what's up, America? Another hour of America at Night. It's Monday night. I never know the day of the week. Monday night edition of the program. Our phone number is 833-4825-337, 833-4-Valdez. And tonight we're going to get into a lot of things, right? There's plenty that I want to discuss with you. We've had some discussion about President Trump's 100 days in office. I told you about this big arrest that occurred over the weekend. Over 100 people arrested at a illegal nightclub. Turns out they were running drugs out of there, running prostitution out of there, and according to the report, some of the security was run by active duty members of the United States military. We'll hear about that from retired Supervisory ICE special agent who survived an ambush by the cartel. Victor Avila is scheduled to join us a little bit later. But right now, I want to talk about some of the things that go into what makes up the president's first 100 days. Because in my opinion, President Trump, he's called for lots of things to happen, right? He's called for the border to be shut down. And in the last month or two, has reported those 96% decrease in crossings, then most recently 99% decrease in crossings. That sounds like success to me. I can't imagine being more successful than completely shutting down the border, getting Mexico to pony up and play ball, putting the cartels as labeling the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, labeling MS-13 as a foreign terrorist organization, labeling the Tren de Aragua gang, or I should say criminal syndicate, right, terrorist organization from Venezuela. So there's a number of big successes just on the immigration front. Then you look at the economy and you say, well, here's a guy who said he was going to repeal or get rid of or eventually eliminate income tax, right? And replace it with the External Revenue Service with tariffs, meaning people are still going to pay those taxes, but on imports as opposed to on their own income. Steps are being taken toward that. You've got 70-plus nations coming to the table saying, yep, we're willing to make a deal after President Trump's very, very, I'm going to call it persuasive, some might say heavy-handed, I will say persuasive, negotiating strategy of using tariffs to create reciprocal tariffs to, get people to the table, to get to a zero for zero tariff situation so that the United States can bring more manufacturing into the country. You've got Hyundai agreeing to build a steel mill in the United States. You've got Honda agreeing to build 90% of their cars in the United States. I think that's terrific. You've seen, in my opinion, I mean, there's just been a number of successes on so many fronts on those two main areas, the economy and the border. What else? Last month, there was an announcement from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency that they were now allowing the previously not allowed cryptocurrencies to be recognized and held by banks. The FDIC also, and that was reiterated just last week, the FDIC reverses their U.S. crypto banking policy that demanded all these prior approvals. So we are headed to an area where people can start using their cryptocurrencies in banks. This is a positive move. Why is it a positive move, Rich? Well, I'll tell you why. If you kidnap someone, use ransomware, whatever you want to do, you know, back in the days, it used to be, put it in a Swiss account, you know, francs or whatever it was. But that's not as reliable as Bitcoin today. Bitcoin's where all the bad guys want to put their money, right? Because it's reliable. It's showing that it withstands a lot of the volatility of the crypto markets, and people like it. Plus, it's blockchain, so you know it's on the blockchain. You can see exactly where it's going, where it's coming from. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of detractors out there that can point out 10 different things that are wrong with Bitcoin, and whether it's because it's difficult to mine or it doesn't transmit quickly. It takes a long time to move big amounts of money over. Whatever the case is, there's critiques for everything in life. But my point is, it's proven its value. And now we're integrating that into our economic system, slowly but surely. This is a huge win for the American economy because you know what? You haven't seen China say, we're going to integrate Bitcoin, we're integrating crypto. They said they're going to create their own crypto. Good luck to you. Right? Good luck to everybody that's trying to, the BRICS consortium also said they were going to try and do that. Why? Because they couldn't agree on whether it was Brazil, Russia, China, or anybody, Iran, any of the other players there, South Africa. They couldn't agree on whose currency would be the face of BRICS. So I'd say that they're not going anywhere. I think Trump has pretty much single-handedly handicapped the BRICS consortium, right? There was all this propaganda going around about, the contract for the petrodollar and OPEC not being signed to get this, that, and the other. What do you think they're buying and selling oil in today? U.S. dollars. So it makes sense to continue to support the dollar, not pull the plug on the dollar. And all of these things, in my opinion, are going right towards exactly what Trump is doing. His first 100 days in office, he's got the ball rolling on all of this stuff. And to see 5 polls come out saying that he's underwater and this and that when he's probably closer to 50%, to me is what we always see. I mean, we've seen it time and again from the left within the media. They've got to have something to say, right? They want to be able to criticize him on something. But sadly, in this situation, it's going to be tough to bring. I mean, you can bring whatever critique you want, right? And I'll say it's fair criticism. Everything is fair criticism. But the positive attributes of this administration in the first 100 days far outweigh any criticism you could bring to the table. Really, any. President's working diligently on trying to bring about peace on different fronts, conflicts he didn't start and didn't cause. Trying to put an end. He's trying to be a peacemaker. And historically, he's always been a pacifist. He's not a war hawk. So, hey, I think these are all feathers in his cap. These are all positives for the Trump administration. And these are going to be big W's once they're solidified. You know, meetings with Zelensky, Putin saying we've agreed to a ceasefire, I think effective May 8th. I might be getting that wrong. Maybe it's effective 3 days before May 8th. But point is, we're about a week away. These are big milestones. And all the left can do is say, he said he'd have the war finished in the first 24 hours. Okay. He missed the mark on that one. All right, maybe he oversold it. We're at the 100-day mark. We're still literally in the honeymoon era phase of the presidency, and we've got Russia saying, "Here we are." So hey, look, I'm not mad at El Trompito in any way, and like I said, it's going to be slim pickings for people that want to criticize him. You can criticize him, but these wins far outweigh any critique that you could come up with. Anyway, I want to talk about this this raid on an underground nightclub where they were selling Tusi, that pink cocaine, and prostitution and all sorts of things that you would find in an illegal nightclub. And I heard a lot of critique about saying, I can't believe this is what they're doing now, shutting down kids from having a good time. If you were American kids, they'd be doing it, let alone, hundreds of illegal immigrants and gang members that are now part of terrorist organizations, right? FTOs. So, like I said, the criticism is slim pickings lately, but we're going to hear about that from somebody who literally survived an ambush, a shootout with the cartel. Former ICE Supervisory Special Agent Victor Avila is going to be joining us straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So this is an underground illegal nightclub, okay? And what was happening inside was significant drug trafficking, prostitution, crimes of violence. We seized a number of guns in there. We had active duty service members who were running security at the club and involved in some of these crimes. And in fact, we had over 100 illegal aliens inside as well, and those over 100 illegal aliens were taken into custody by ICE.
Active duty service members helping as security here. Can you elaborate on that at all?
So it's an ongoing investigation, but we had over a dozen active duty service members in the club tonight, either as patrons or working as armed security.
How many of those were detained, and what are they facing right now?
So Army CID was one of our partners out here, and they're going to work with us on what the next steps for those active duty service members looks like.
Well, how about that, right, amigos? Anyway, that is Jonathan Pullen, Special Agent in charge of the Rocky Mountain Field Division of the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and they led this raid working with Army Criminal Investigations Division and so many others, and as well as ICE. And this is what they discovered, right? This illegal underground nightclub where you had active duty troops serving as security and whatnot. You heard they were involved in some of the crimes, as well as over 114 illegal aliens that were detained there. Many of them suspected of having ties to being Maryland man. No, I'm kidding. To being, involved somehow with one of the foreign terrorist organizations. So I want to get the scoop on this from somebody who knows about this stuff way more than me. Victor Avila is a retired supervisory special agent for ICE. And back when he was on the front lines, he survived an ambush by the cartel and wrote a book about it called Agent Under Fire, A Murder and a Manifesto. Victor Avila, welcome back.
Rich, it's always great to be back with you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Well, let's talk about this. So this went down in Colorado. Now, I know a couple of months back, I think we had a conversation about what was going on in Colorado with Tren de Aragua really growing their influence there as well as in Montana. And I'm sure Tom Homan and the DEA and DHS and the FBI and everybody else that's involved have their finger on the pulse of what's happening. And that's why ICE was collaborating with DEA and everybody else to go after these guys. Tell us more.
And that's right, and it's one of the important things to remember is that this club didn't open on January 20th of this year. This club has been ongoing and operating for a long time, which bears the question, why didn't anybody do anything about it? Why wasn't even at least the local police? Apparently there was hundreds of calls, different crimes related to 911 calls to this location, and no one had done anything. So here we are enforcing the rules, enforcing the law and order back to where it's supposed to be. And to me, it's not a surprise because that's what I did in my career. That's what President Trump is doing, is allowing law enforcement officers and law enforcement agencies, especially working with the state and locals, which, by the way, in Colorado is almost impossible because the entire state is a sanctuary state. And I lived there for a few years, and let me tell you, it is bad. It would be a lot better if the state and locals would cooperate with ICE and the federal agencies. But at this point, these sanctuary cities, especially in states like Colorado, they don't want anybody working with anyone that has to do with the federal government, and that's a bad thing for the public because what we're talking about here is public safety. These type of places, Rich, they're brewing crime. Everything that you described, the drugs, the trafficking, the prostitution, crimes of violence, you heard him say that. Well, I kind of want to tell you this. I have a feeling, a very strong feeling, that you're going to see a lot of these type of places around the country start getting taken down by federal officials. And you'll be surprised. You're going to be surprised where you're going to find these type of places because they exist all over the U.S.
Yeah, and I think anybody who's ever watched TV, right? TV is not always accurate, but you watch a good biker show and you see what biker gangs look like. This is that on steroids, right? These clubhouses, in effect, this is where the gang members go to do what they do under the protection of, the disguise of a warehouse or whatever, because they couldn't really pull it off in a regular nightclub.
No, there's just too many regulations and strict rules by, the alcohol and that type of control. And they do it underground to be able to do it, and it calls for these type of people. Of course, the illegals are going to there. Of course, the gang members are going there. Why? Because that's where they distribute their drugs. That's where they make the deals. That's where these guys hang out. And of course, I'm not saying everybody that goes there are bad, but they get the bad people mixed in with the good people, and then you get it's not a good outcome. And then nothing good happens at 3:00 in the morning anyway. So this is something that Tom Homan talked about today, and I've talked to Tom Homan about this before, and that's worksite enforcement, which is a little different than this because obviously this was a club. But the reason I bring it up is because it's the collaboration of the enforcement of groups like these multi-agencies that you're going to see hitting not just nightclubs, but a lot of large employers that are employing illegal aliens and a lot of places where they gather. Because you hear this, I hear this a lot now, Rich. People know where they gather. They know where they hang out. And they always wonder, they're right here. Why isn't ICE here? Why isn't the police here? Well, we know. Believe me, we know. The locals know. They've always known. And it's just the will of, unfortunately, or no will of the local elected officials, the mayors, the city councils that want to block that type of enforcement for many different reasons. I've seen because they don't want that black eye in their community because they'll lose money and investment in the community. But you're going to see them start getting taken down.
Well, it's the right thing to do. Victor Avila, stick with us. We're going to come right back, continue this discussion, and get your take on Trump's first 100 days. And, amigos, we continue. If you want to join the conversation, feel free. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. We're coming right back with Victor Avila, former ICE special agent. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Yeah, I think they're oblivious and obtuse, those protesters. They just don't get it. And neither do judges, Lawrence. They tend to delude themselves into thinking that their lofty position somehow absolves or insulates them. It doesn't. That's a mistaken belief. Like everybody else, judges have to follow the law. They're sworn to uphold the law. But there's a trend here that you've probably noticed. Sanctuary cities have now morphed into rogue sanctuary judges. These sanctuary policies embolden, encourage judges to do the kinds of things that Judge Hanna has done, and the judge in New Mexico as well. And, they do this at their own peril.
That is our buddy Greg Jarrett talking on the Fox News channel about these rogue judges aiding and abetting illegal immigrants with criminal records from absconding from the law. And it helps me to frame this conversation by saying last week I told you about 20 years ago I was calling out local people in New Jersey for this because there were local politicians getting donations from the people running these bars that had local police as off-duty security and sometimes on-duty security, and they were running human trafficking out of there. And this is a problem I saw 20 years ago. It's still going on right now. We saw it with the arrest in the nightclub. We're seeing it all over the place. So I want to bring back in our guest, Victor Avila, because in the previous segment, he just mentioned that with these sanctuary cities keeping, cooperation at a minimum, it also begs the question, how much are they helping, like we've seen with these judges? Victor Avila, welcome back.
Absolutely. And, by not cooperating, then I guess by default, you are assisting and aiding and abetting the illegal in this case. These judges, I tell you, this past week, I happened to just come back from El Paso, and I was in El Paso on the border and Sunland Park, New Mexico, really close to Las Cruces, New Mexico, where the other judge was, that had a Prende Aragua terrorist in his house. I mean, the first time I heard it, I couldn't even believe it. I think
it's hard to believe,
make
right?
This up.
Did you know that guy was a cop before he was a judge?
Yeah, and the wife just got arrested. There was some indication that the TDA member was possibly dating the daughter. Who knows? But he had access to the firearms that the judge gave him, and he's posting with the AR and all that. This is just nuts. But
the judge wasn't coerced. It's clear he was complicit.
Well, of course, and but it goes to the I think the mentality that we're living in today, that these judges think they are above the law, that they are exempt from whatever a law it would apply to them. I'm telling you, I used to arrest people and charge them with 8 U.S.C. 1324, exactly what the judge was doing, exactly what the other judge was doing, keeping the other one keeping the ICE agents away from the guy in the courthouse. Who eventually got caught anyway, but that's
it wasn't judges back then, I guess.
Right, and they're harboring. My goodness, that's one of the biggest things that we did on the border. You harbor an illegal alien, you go to jail. It's the same. It's the same as if you would put a stash house full of illegal aliens. It's no difference. But just because you wear a black robe doesn't give you the exemption to break the law. And I think now that was probably the one that broke the camel's back. Because I think the Trump administration will go forward, not just with judges, but any elected official, whether it's a mayor, maybe even a governor. Rich, we've seen the governor of New Jersey and others that have become protectionists, right? Protectors of the bad ones, protectors of the illegals, protectors of the criminals, which I think the American people, no matter what side you're on, agree that that's wrong, that they're there, first of all, with our taxpayer money to protect us, the Americans, and they're not going to tolerate it anymore. And I think Trump is going to end up getting a lot more support because eventually the spiral, the effect, the ripple effect that we saw with the open border, the bad ripple effect against our schools, our healthcare, everywhere, right? Criminal justice system. Now you're going to start seeing the positive effect. And all of a sudden, I'm telling you, I just came back from El Paso, and people are telling me that even the traffic in some parts of the city has cleared up where the illegals used to congregate. The airport, Rich, when I used to fly from El Paso to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the airport was full of illegals. The airplane was full of illegals. All of that is gone, and you're starting to see it clean up. And I think you're going to start seeing that in the interior of the country as well.
Victor Avila, what do you think? I got two questions for you. The first one is, what do you think about the people that say that this is a constitutional crisis that we're seeing in America, that we're arresting these judges that are breaking the law?
The constitutional crisis is the lack of enforcement. I talked to a lot of border agents this past week. The morale has shifted dramatically. Why? Because they're doing their job. They actually are doing what they got trained to do, and they're back. They feel like they have the authority. They have the backup by the president, by the administration, by the supervisors. They feel emboldened to do better, and actually that type of feeling is a positive feeling. The other way around, we had the highest suicide rate in the last 4 years under Border Patrol agents. Why? Wow. I don't know if there's a correlation between the Biden administration and that, but I'll tell you what, it didn't help that they were forced to do things that they didn't want to do. So that was the constitutional crisis of ignoring the law, ignoring immigration law. By the way, Trump is not doing anything extraordinary here. I want people to know that they're not doing anything but just letting people know that this is what law enforcement looks like.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. He's not going above and beyond here. He's doing what he's supposed to do under the Constitution. Really good point. Folks, we're on with Supervisory Special Agent Victor Avila, retired from ICE. He was the victim and the victor of an attack on his life. He was ambushed back in 2011 by the cartels, and he wrote a book about it. Make sure you grab a copy of the book. It's an amazing story. It's called Agent Under Fire, A Murder and a Manifesto. Now, Victor Avila, I always like to push the envelope a little bit because while we're talking about sanctuary city judges and people that may be politicized and leaning towards, helping their political position with this stuff, I think there's still room to ask the question, forget about politics. Have these people been turned or compromised by the cartels? Is this the cartel with an inside man? And I asked that because I interviewed somebody on this program that wrote a book about a guy he interviewed who actually served 20 years in the NYPD working for, I think it was the Genovese crime family. And he was an informant for the Genovese while serving as a cop the entire 20 years. He retired. He eventually got locked up. There was a book by Michael Cannell, but he was able to complete his mission. He did get caught at the end, but it was amazing to me that was the extent that the crime families in New York City were going to at the time. And if they did it back then, I can only imagine the cartels are doing that now.
Rich, the answer is yes. And you didn't hear any hesitation. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to talk about it because you're talking about law enforcement, you're talking about corruption. I can tell you in my career, I did two cases, one against took down a corrupt Border Patrol agent and a corrupt female CBP inspector at the port of entry. It is real. If you go to the CBP website, they have a page dedicated to all these individuals that get arrested that have been working with the cartels, and not just law enforcement officials, but these cartel members, by the way, they're 100% present all over the United States. They have these infiltrators. When I go and talk to police groups, I tell them, get the bias out of your head of what a cartel member looks like, because I even fell into that trap early in my career. Well, the guy must be wearing a cowboy hat with these pointed boots. No. They're teachers, they're lawyers, they're doctors, they work at the courthouse and all places, because these cartels have these places infiltrated by members of their family, friends, that are an extension of that organization, and they get information. I worked many cases, some that I can't tell you, that they had people in places that you would never imagine getting the intel, because that's what the cartel, how they function, is they stay ahead many steps. This is what's changing right now. One thing is securing the border and limiting that intel to be shared by the cartels, because once you limit the intel, limit the money, then you start breaking them down. But the focus is not just on the border and in Mexico, but within the United States, the ones that are already here. There's plenty of fentanyl in the United States to kill us all twice over already in here. So we also have to focus on that and get education programs and all that to, tell our kids to stop using these pills. You mentioned in the report in Colorado in the pink cocaine, and cocaine is making a huge comeback. A lot of smuggling is making a huge comeback. Why? Because the border is secure. They can't just walk it across anymore. So they're going back to their old ways to bring in the illegals and their drugs. And so that's a great question, because unfortunately, it exists, and Office of Internal, the General Office that does the corruption is overwhelmed with that type of work.
Yeah, and just from the report that you just referenced, hearing that there were so many active duty military members there makes me think, are they somehow involved or complicit or infiltrated in one way? It's a problem bigger than I think we know.
Yeah, and the military is another thing. When I was a gang intel officer in El Paso, and even as an agent, unfortunately, we did come across a lot of active duty military members that were involved in crime. I mean, and there's no way to sugarcoat that. And a lot of them were had their affiliations with their gangs or where they came from, and because the military, is all over the world, they're able to expand those connections to different bases all over the world. And so you have, and this might be very surprising to a lot of people, I understand, but you have Latin Kings, you have Black Gangster Disciples, you have all these type of gangs that are originated in the U.S. all over the world because of the membership in the military.
Wow. Victor Avila, always an eye-opening discussion with you. Thanks for schooling us on a lot of this stuff. Hope to have you back soon. Folks, check out his book, agentunderfirebook.com. The book, again, Agent Under Fire. Victor Avila, retired ICE Supervisory Special Agent, survived an ambush by the cartel. I'm glad you did. Victor, Godspeed to you, my man.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks for having me back. Talk to you soon.
You bet. Same here. And, amigos, your thoughts, calls, and reactions to what's going on straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez keeping you company all night long. And I am going to give you the phone number, 833-482-5337. If you want to join us, I'm going to get to your calls momentarily. But first, I want to talk about something President Trump said, because we're going into the first 100 days of El Trumpito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, El Presidente. And El Presidente, El Trumpito, he said that there would be major changes to our tax code where tariffs might eventually just completely wipe out the need to tax our income. Listen to this one, number 15.
We got plenty of problems in the world. When I left 4.5 years ago, and I'll tell you what, we didn't have any of these problems. The good news is costs are way down, groceries are down, eggs are down, gasoline is way down. It's all coming down. It's all looking good. If the tariffs are strong, we're taking in a lot of money from tariffs. We were losing a lot before I got here. We were losing billions of dollars a day, and now we're doing great, and we haven't even kicked in yet. And eventually we'll be reducing taxes very substantially for the people of our country because the money is so great coming in from tariffs that I'll be able to reduce taxes to a very large extent and maybe almost completely.
All right. Hopefully you could hear all that. That was President Trump boarding Air Force One here in New Jersey, Morristown Airport, and said maybe completely wiping out income tax, the need for income taxes, the amount of money generated by external revenue, right, or taxes from imports known as tariffs. So I think this is on brand with exactly what he said he was going to do during the campaign. I think a lot of people want to hear about that. I think people like the big, beautiful bill. People like the idea that there is hope for a potential to have no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. I think people are excited at the fact that there is hope for Democrats to see the light and say, you know what, we're going to continue the Trump tax cuts. So looks like there's a lot of good stuff on the horizon for El Trompito, and I see him having really good marks riding into his first 100 days, riding high. But I want to get your thoughts on that as well. And I also want to have some discussion on Trump. Trump sat down with Zelensky over at the Pope's funeral. I think that was a good discussion. Looked pretty intense. I have no idea what they talked about. El Trompito, if you're still up, I know it's late, but if you're up and you want to call in, the number is 833-482-5337. Mr. President, we'd love to hear from you. I want to know, fly on the wall, what did you and Volodymyr Zelensky, what did you guys talk about? And we're going to talk about that and what is going on with the ceasefire, what's going on with Israel, what's going on with everything geopolitically. We'll check in with all of that stuff as well in a little bit. But first, your calls and more coming up now.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, let's go to the phones, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go start off in New York, WGDJ country. Check in with Drew. Go right ahead, Drew. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
How you doing, Rich? I love your show. I was just kind of wondering, what do you think about what's going to happen with this DA in New York? She's corrupt as ever.
Well, I mean, listen, it's a New York politician. There are very few New York politicians that aren't corrupt. There's like three Republicans. The rest of them are all Democrats. They all play the same game. I hope we can get more Republicans elected. But ultimately, what I think happens here is this. This is me, and I could be wrong here, but when you observe politics and you watch how people move. I worked for a governor that was a big prosecutor, Chris Christie. And those guys typically, they don't pull out their gun until they're going to shoot. And so to say we're making criminal referrals for this, and this leads me to believe that is the bulk of it. If they had a case, they would have said, and today we're announcing the indictment of New York Attorney General Letitia James. And the reason they didn't do that is because they probably aren't going to get to that. I could be wrong, and I hope that I am. I hope that, if she committed a crime and she lied about her husband, her dad being her husband in order to get preferential treatment on a loan application or whatnot, then she should, she did it, she should do it. And the irony would be more than rich. But my gut tells me she's been exposed for who she is, and the damage is already done in the court of public opinion. And that's what I think ultimately happens there, Drew.
Yeah, I just kind of want to see some people pay, right? She should be the one. I mean, if you were going to make an example, you make an example of her because, she's straight up evil.
Yeah,
right?
Well, I don't think that they're trying to give her a pass by any means. Like, we're going to threaten you, but we're not going to do anything. I think what happens in a lot of these situations is, in order to get people to realize how wrong what people are doing is, sometimes exaggeration is used. Have you ever noticed how every time any politician does something bad, right away they're calling for the gallows? They're saying, oh my God, that's treason. You're a traitor. They're not really treasonous traitors. They're corrupt politicians. And typically corrupt politicians, the number one way they pay is at the ballot box, not the jail cell. But maybe things will change, and maybe we'll see a difference in our future. I don't know. Drew, thanks for the call. WGDJ in the building. Amigos, keep it locked right here. Coming right back. The rest of your calls and more. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of the program. We're live, we're national. It's Monday night, 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and I want to give you the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez, and I want to get into a few things, like usual. It's Monday, so there's a lot to talk about, a lot of ground to cover, but we're going to do some foreign policy, geopolitics. We're going to do a little domestic politics, because, of course, 100 days of El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States. And I got to tell you, Trump has done so much in these 100 days. It feels like he's been president for a lot more than 100 days, at least in my opinion it does. But part of what I want to talk about is this, right? I believe, and I said this before, but it bears repeating. Trump was elected to be president again, to become the 47th president, in my opinion, on two issues, immigration and the economy. Two things that Joe Biden not only did poorly, but actively destroyed. And Trump is doing, in my opinion, an amazing job in recovering both. The border, 99% decrease in illegal crossings. What, are you not going to say that he's doing a good job there? Labeling these foreign gangs like MS-13 and Tren de Aragua as foreign terrorist organizations, because that's what they are. Engaged in human trafficking and fentanyl dealing and everything else. These are huge wins, and allowing the military to be involved, even if it's just a bargaining chip, saying, hey, look, now that you're an FTO, I can get the Army on you. What's up? This isn't just the DEA anymore. You really want to go there? And now you see how Mexico is a lot more responsive, taking us a lot more seriously. Good. Tariff strategy. Whether you love it or hate it, it's effective. We've got people that are coming back to the United States. Apple is coming back to the United States. Not entirely, but in part. And again, the more it makes sense for them to be here, the more they're going to be here. Hyundai building a steel mill. Honda committing to 90% of all U.S. cars sold will be made in the U.S. This is a big commitment. That's just naming a couple. So I've got to say, things look effective on that end as well. What about all of the negative talk? Well, of course there's going to be negative talk. But look, crime is a real thing, right? Crime, especially there's crime that, believe it or not, comes as a result of having illegal aliens in your country. This is just the truth. This is not my xenophobia speaking. Now, I'm sure there's somebody listening saying, what about the crime from the Americans? Okay, what about it? That's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about immigration here. The conversation's on immigration. The conversation is on the Secretary of Homeland Security last week getting robbed. Somebody stole her purse, Secretary Kristi Noem, with some cash, an expensive bag, all that stuff. Right? Remember that story? And some of our detractors were saying, oh, why does she have such an expensive bag and blah, blah, blah. Bottom line, they got the guy. Who was he? He was an illegal alien. Listen to Tom Homan.
What can you tell us about these individuals' immigration history as well as their criminal history?
I don't have the criminal history, but I know the one that stole the purse is supposedly in the country illegally. But, pick the wrong person to steal first from. I mean, Secretary Noem's a strong secretary. I know I've been talking about the success of men and women of the Border Patrol and ICE, but under her strong leadership, she's a game changer. So I'm happy to work with her, despite the media I've read that me and Kristi Noem have differences. Me and Kristi Noem are attached at the hip. There's no daylight between us. We're both going to push the president's agenda. She's a strong secretary, and I'm glad she's in here. And I'm glad. But again, that illegal alien, picked the wrong person, steal person. I'm telling you.
Yep, picked the wrong person indeed. And I think this is good, right? It's good that we're getting the bad guys. It's good that we're taking steps towards doing the right thing. This is very important. Now, on the foreign policy front, President Trump had a meeting with an impromptu meeting with, and I say impromptu because I don't know that was something that was widely advertised, but with President Volodymyr Zelensky. I want to say it right. To the contrary of some people who believe, I was corrected on this program, right, by one of our Ukrainian listeners that said, no, it's not Volodymyr, it's Volodymyr. So I try to say it right. Why not? Just like I tried to say Mahmoud, what's his last name? Mahmoud. Anybody? Khalil, right? Mahmoud Khalil, right? It adds dramatic effect. I'm a radio guy. You want to do that every now and again. Anyway, this conversation with Volodymyr Zelensky and El Trumpito, the president of the United States, happening in Rome as a result of the passing of the Pope. And President Trump was asked about the little dispute that they had in the White House and about his meeting with Zelensky. I think mum was kind of the word on the most recent meeting, but here's what he had to say.
Message to Vladimir Putin after your meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, and how did that meeting go? I think the meeting went well. We'll see what happens over the next few days. We'll probably learn a lot. I was very disappointed that missiles were flying by Russia, and that missiles were flying. Very disappointing. We'll see how it goes.
So President Trump saying, he was somewhat disappointed. We'll see how it goes. He thinks we're doing very well. I had a tough time hearing that myself. Talking about the Iran situation. We'll replay that audio in a little bit. Maybe we can get a transcript for it. But ultimately, he brushed off the reporter's question about the dispute that he had with Zelensky. And this is, a big thing because you've got Russia saying they agree to a ceasefire. So I want to talk about this big ceasefire with Vladimir, not Volodymyr, but Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, and get some reaction to what's happening there, because you got a lot going on there. You've got Iran that's got their foot in just about everything, right? They've got their toes dipped in every water they can get it dipped in. And we've got what appears to be not just a modern-day axis of evil, but the potential or potentiality for a multi-front conflict, whether it be hot or cold type of war. And this is something that I think we, would not be in our best interest to engage in, unless it is. I hope that it's not. So we're going to get some analysis on that, plus your thoughts and your calls and reactions to everything else that's going on. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The Kremlin this Monday declaring a full ceasefire in Ukraine on May 8th through 10th as Russia celebrates the Victory Day over Nazi Germany. We're learning the truce will start on May 8th and last through May 10th. The Kremlin saying that Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered the full cessation of hostilities on, quote, humanitarian grounds for the Victory Day on May 9th.
That is a report from Fox News. Again, Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared a temporary ceasefire that will take effect on May 8th. We've heard this stuff before, right? Hey, look, we're thinking of doing a ceasefire. Oh, wait, let me go bomb this energy facility, right? And on both sides of that fence, I think you're dealing with two people that I don't want to say can't be trusted, but I'm going to say can't be trusted. At least that's my opinion. But what do I know? I want to bring in one of the pros here, somebody who knows a lot more about this than I do. Dr. Rebecca Grant is vice president of the Lexington Institute, and she knows all about the programs that go on here because she is an expert on this stuff, talking about the Pentagon and so much more. Dr. Grant, welcome.
Glad to be talking with you.
Likewise. So I want to get your take here on this ceasefire. Is this something we should take seriously, maybe a little bit more seriously than we took the umpteenth attempts that we've seen from Hamas to have ceasefires? What say you?
Well, who knows? I mean, he is so unpredictable. But if we're talking about, Putin saying that he will have the ceasefire that goes with the big Russian celebration of the end of World War II, right? I mean, that is still an event that looms really large for Vladimir Putin. And so, maybe. But having said that, we have not seen a real ceasefire in Ukraine. So 50-50.
Yeah, coin toss for sure. And I get that. Now, let's say it does go through. And I'm guessing, I don't know. I tend to think, Doc, and you tell me what I might be missing here, but it seems to me that at some point, Putin can turn this into a win. And so can Zelensky. I think they can both try, and maybe that's what they're trying to do here, is to walk away, making it look like, I bested the other guy. And if I've ever seen this stuff happen before, I think that's what they're both trying to do. Do you think that's what's actually happening, or do you think they both just don't want to stop and really just want to kill the other guy?
Well, I think you're on to something for sure. And now, let me be clear. My personal opinion, Putin's the bad guy. It's an illegal invasion. Zelensky's done a great job, holding Ukraine together and fighting, and I'm on their side. Having said that, I think a win-win, if Zelensky thinks he's won and Putin thinks he's won, maybe that's the path out. It looks like to me, behind the scenes, the incentives that President Trump and Steve Witkoff are offering Russia are really in the economic sphere. We don't hear a lot about it, but we know Russia's key negotiator is Kirill Dmitriev, who runs their sovereign wealth fund. I think Russia is looking for some opportunities to move a little bit away from China, hopefully, and to get their economy back on track. So that's got to be the set of carrots going for Putin. For Ukraine, it's a matter also of economics, of how will Ukraine rebuild, how will Ukraine be viable economically going forward. So you may be onto something. If each one thinks they have won the day, then maybe that's what it takes.
Right. Now, in creating such a win-win strategy, which I think is where Trump comes in, where he creates this, he says, look, Vlad, you're a winner. Listen, you're getting this. And then, come on, Volodymyr, you get this. And if they can pull something like that off, what do you think it looks like? I think for Zelensky, he's got to be able to say, we held the Donbass, where we got back that first region that they took early on. And for Putin, I don't know. I don't know what the win would be there. I think his original issue was access to the Black Sea and reclaiming the motherland. So I don't know how much of that would be a win for him, but what can you add to that?
Right. Well, to rack and stack it, let's start with Zelensky. The win will be, he actually was elected in 2019 to achieve peace with Russia, if you can believe that. So there will be a win. I know, because there had been so much fighting beforehand, and who knew this was going to happen, and the weakness of the Biden team. Oh my gosh. Anyway, So for Zelensky, the win will be to stop the fighting and to continue to have Ukraine sovereign. And he did win by making sure that Putin didn't get Kiev, and they've really won in the Black Sea. Ukraine's Navy, with help from us and NATO, has been super. On Putin's side, hey, he can spin it however he wants because he completely controls information in Russia. So if he wants to make up some crazy story like he did to start the war, he can make up a crazy story to end the war as well. The real horse trading, though, is over some pretty significant items. That is Zaporizhia, their nuclear power plant, one of the biggest in Europe, and then Crimea. Right now, Russia has Zaporizhia. I think it needs to come back to Ukraine for this deal to work.
Yeah. Very, very interesting stuff. Now, what's the other side of that coin? Let's say, Dr. Rebecca Grant, that they don't get those two regions. Do you think they can still move forward after a peace deal? What would it look like? What would it take for either side? You know, how much do you think Zelensky would give where he doesn't look like a loser? And how much, you know, I guess, where's that happy medium, if one exists, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's so tough. You know, I think essential for Ukraine is to keep control of the port of Odessa, which they do have. It's got a bunch of mines around it, but it's still up and running. Like I said before, I think they do need to have Ukraine, or it's been even proposed U.S. control of the big nuclear power plant at Zaporizhia. And then they need security guarantees. There's actually been progress there. Zelensky's indicated he will accept tighter air defenses and air power from NATO as a set of security guarantees. So I think that's a win if Ukraine, while not a NATO member, is still tucked into the European security guarantees, and Ukraine then perhaps becomes a member of the European Union. That would all be a big win for him. And Putin, you know, I'm sorry, he is the loser here, even if he does get some of the territory and keeps Crimea. Let me point out the big Navy base at Sebastopol has been rendered pretty useless by Ukraine's smart use of seagoing drones and other things. It's so bad the Russian fleet had to move out of Sebastopol. They had to move their headquarters someplace else that was safer.
So, Dr. Rebecca Grant, it seems to me that if Putin can figure out a way to say, you know what, we have achieved our goal, Ukraine will never become a part of NATO, and maybe they'll become a part of the EU, a formal member, whatever. I don't care about that. I just need to keep them out of NATO. NATO can't continue to expand. We've won against the imperialist NATO people. Rah, rah, rah. Do you think that's enough?
Yeah, I think that's possible. No, I think all this NATO expansion is ridiculous, and he's made all this up. NATO did not threaten Russia in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, Putin might take that by saying Ukraine won't be in NATO and accept that. And then, you know, Putin has a choice to make. He's really sold out Russia to China. China's keeping them in this war, and there's Putin not doing the technology development. Where's Putin's AI initiatives? Where is the Russian economy going? So if he's thinking about that at all, he's got to be thinking, wow, we're a vassal state to China. Russia is a vassal state to China at this point. Is that how he wants it to continue? Who knows?
Folks, we're on with Dr. Rebecca Grant from the Lexington Institute. She's vice president there, and she spent her career over 2 decades working with the U.S. Air Force, the Navy, and other aerospace clients. You see her all over television, and we're going to continue our conversation with her, getting her analysis on what's going on in the Middle East, in particular with Iran, and we might get some input from her on China as well. So keep it locked right here, folks. Rich Valdez coming right back with Dr. Rebecca Grant.
Glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I think we should bring in the ballistic missiles, the prevention of the development of ballistic missiles into the deal. I think these are the 2 requirements. I said to President Trump that I hope that this is what the negotiators will do when close contact with the United States. But I said one way or the other, Iran will not have nuclear weapons.
That, of course, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking about Iran's quest for ballistic missiles and the enrichment of uranium. And this was Netanyahu on Sunday, talking about what he thinks should be included in any deal that the U.S. puts together with Iran. As we know, the U.S. is negotiating directly with Iran to try and bring about peace with all of their terrorist proxy groups. So I want to talk about this, and maybe we can touch on China as well, with Dr. Rebecca Grant. She's vice president of the Lexington Institute. And Dr. Grant, when you hear Prime Minister Netanyahu very definitively say Iran will not get a nuclear weapon, and we hear President Trump saying Iran must not get a nuclear weapon, it seems like, Israel and the United States as allies are on the same page, but I feel like Iran is not on the same page, to put it lightly. Your thoughts?
Well, they're saying that because the truth is they have limited strike options that are ready to go. As President Trump says 2 or 3 times a week, all the options are on the table. He doesn't want to go to war, but he has actually deployed the forces to the Middle East that can carry out limited strikes, if necessary, on Iran's nuclear sites. And this is just such a big change, and it's occurred because the attacks that Iran did against Israel last year, big missile attacks, 300 missiles in April, another similar 200 to 300 launched in October. We and Israel managed to knock all of those down, causing very little damage. But the difference is that it's no longer unthinkable to attack Iran's nuclear facilities. I'm not talking about an all-out war. I'm talking about very specifically targeted attacks. And that is an element of military pressure that, to my mind, is the number one reason that Iran is actually negotiating about its nuclear program right now.
So and I've been told by every analyst I've ever talked to about Iran that they only respond to strength. They don't care about diplomacy. This seems to be proof that that's accurate. Your thoughts?
It's really tough to figure Iran out. They're so recalcitrant. That regime has been in place now for so many decades that it's just very tough to know. What we think has changed this time is that now the threat of Israeli and U.S. action is so credible that Iran's new president, Mahmoud Pezeshkian, has gone to the Ayatollah and said, hey, look, they're really serious. We have to enter talks. And we have to do the nuclear talks, and that's why Iran's foreign minister showed up first in Oman and then in Rome and then back to Oman, and they're actually engaging in talks. Now, what is it going to take? Because, yes, Netanyahu is right. This needs to cover ballistic missile production. By the way, China helps them. It also needs to pull out that enriched uranium that Iran is enriching and storing in violation of everything, and they don't need it. They don't need it for civilian nuclear power. So there's a lot that has to take place, and there have to be real UN inspections, again, return to that. So can Iran agree to all that? Wow, I don't know. But certainly the pressure from our U.S. aircraft carriers, our B-2 bombers, and everything else that's in the region, I think is a big element in keeping this deal and the talks moving forward at this point.
Really well put, Dr. Rebecca Grant from the Lexington Institute. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit because I agree with what you're saying, and it seems it's a coin toss here. Iran seems to respond to strength, and it's the real threat of military action that's getting them to move. I don't know that but for that threat being on the table that they would be making any moves. Apologists for Iran typically say they're not looking to bomb anyone, which I would disagree with, but they say that the reason they're involved in all this proxy terrorism is really because there's so many sanctions against them and they just want their money. And if they were able to keep the money that they were making, then they wouldn't bomb anybody. Do you believe that?
Oh, my goodness, no.
I don't
you lay
either.
it out well. But, the Biden administration freed up another $16 billion in Iranian assets for them, and they just use it to fund terrorism and build more centrifuges. And their nuclear fuel enrichment, they're the only people other than the North Koreans who do this in the world. There is no reason when you over-enrich uranium like this, you can't even use it in a nuclear power plant. So there's no reason to do it other than to develop a weapons program. Yeah, no, don't believe him for a minute.
Me either. Don't trust him as far as I can throw him. Now, going in a different direction with their good friends in China. Going to China, my friend Gordon Chang was on the Fox News channel. He made some comments about his thoughts on China caving on the trade war, agreeing and capitulating on a number of areas, exceptions to certain products, semiconductors and et cetera. Your thoughts, did China cave to the Trump administration, to the United States, in your opinion?
Well, Gordon Chang is fantastic, and I think we're kind of waiting to see, just one quick one on Iran and China, 25-year strategic deal, and China sells Iran a lot of the precursors for ballistic missile solid fuel propellant is a big deal. So, I think Gordon's point is that if China does yield, they may do it very subtly. And it would be interesting to see these rumors about potential products being exempted. One that really caught my eye was aviation products. So maybe China still would like to buy some wide-body Boeing jets that they have on order. So it's very interesting, to see how. And you know what? This is the whole point. It is not to have tariffs locked down forever, but to reset and readjust this relationship. And I tell you, the one thing that's got to come out of this is that the U.S. stays in the lead in the sectors where we still have some control, and that is namely AI, artificial intelligence, advanced computing, and quantum. We can't let those sectors go in the way that we did with auto manufacturing, solar panels, shipbuilding, you name it.
Right. Yeah. In effect, somebody was making the argument to me earlier saying, listen, come on, why are you making such a big deal about American manufacturing? You basically have China working as your slave labor, and you're upset about that. And he tried to make it a persuasive point, but I thought to myself, they took an entire industry, many. I don't think that that's something to brag about on our end, do you?
China's game plan is to undercut on price. We've seen this time and again. Then they take market share. U.S. and other businesses fall out of that market, and lo and behold, there sits China dominating, let's say, 90% of solar panel production. And the scary thing, remember the DeepSeek chatbot from a few months ago? Yep. That was a lot cheaper to run than some other similar generative AI chatbots. So there they go again, trying to undercut on price, which they have to do to produce for their economy, and then U.S. and other competitors fall away, and then you suddenly have China dominating generative AI. Whoa, with those communist authoritarian values, that is not what we want. So we've really got to watch them in all the sectors, but particularly in our tech war with China.
Outstanding analysis, Doc. Let everyone know, Dr. Rebecca Grant, Vice President of the Lexington Institute, where they can find you and, keep up to speed with your scholarship and keep up with you on social media.
On the web at lexingtoninstitute.org and on X at LexNextDC, and or follow me at Rebecca Grant DC on X.
Outstanding. Well, I want to thank you for being with us, Doc. Folks, give her a follow. She's terrific. We'll definitely invite her back. Hopefully she'll stay up late and join us in the future. I really appreciate it, Doc.
Thank you. Great discussion.
Likewise. And amigos, your thoughts, calls, and reactions are coming up straight ahead. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night, we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. You sit there in this radio studio, and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, to the phones we go, amigos. Let's check in with Brody, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the legendary KDKA. Go right ahead, sir.
¿Qué es eso, mi amigo?
What's up, brother?
Calmate, escuche y repita. El trapito es grande. Well, that's not proper. Come on, listen. I learned Spanish in high school, and if people would just slow down speaking Spanish, I could probably understand everything. I just want to let you know that.
Excellent.
It's a great language. Excelente. I wanted to tell you that I always tell you that I really do appreciate it. I feel very honored that you always take my call, and I really enjoy your show all the time. I tell you that every time because I don't want you to ever give up. The reason why
I try to talk to as many Americans across the country as I can. Like right now, we've got calls from up north, in the middle of the country, out east with you, waiting for a couple of our West Coast callers to call in. And to me, it really gives us that cross-section that, when we played a clip of Larry King saying, and you've got voices from all these cities, when he gets into that, it really is, for me, this is a very special moment. It's kind of like Chris Matthews sends chills down my leg. Anyway, go ahead, Brody.
Oh, my God, yeah, you have a lot of loyal callers from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, from the KDKA area. I wanted to, I'm very, very happy that Trump is bringing back, let alone all, your guest was fantastic, but I wanted to talk about Columbus Day and how many other holidays. I mean, he put Jesus back in Easter. He's bringing back... Jesus back in Easter. Isn't that hilarious? I don't even know what people were thinking they're going to put into Easter. Some kind of crazy wacko stuff.
Bunnies.
Crazy. I use wacko twice. What are we doing? What are we doing with the Flag Day? We need to make it a holiday. I just think it's fantastic what he's doing. Gulf of America and the Columbus Day. So is Columbus Day back according to
That's the word on the street. It's back. And I got to tell you, I'm a kicking and screaming type of conservative. So I for me, I was like, what's this Indigenous Peoples Day stuff? And not that I wanted to challenge them, right? I just wanted to keep doing what I was doing. I grew up with Columbus Day and in Brooklyn, New York, a very multi-ethnic area. I lived in a somewhat Jewish neighborhood, but, bordered Flatbush, which was like a Black Haitian area at the time. And, I had people from all over, literally. So it was always a big thing. Lots of Italians in our area as well. Columbus Day was a big thing. And in the last few years, it tried to become taboo, right? How dare you? Kind of Greta Thunberg type of thing. But, I'm with you, Brody. It's great that we have Columbus Day, that we're able to celebrate whatever day we have. Everybody else gets their day. Matter of fact, the other side, they get a month for everything they want to celebrate.
Oh, my God. I love how you put it in perspective. Well, let's just keep doing this and don't listen to the numbers about how terrible he's doing. It's all lies, folks. I'm talking to the whole country. You lost. It's all lies. Just give up.
You're right, brother. Brody, thank you for your call, my friend. I appreciate it. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is in the building on KDKA. And we're going to continue. We're going to keep it moving right here. We're going to go to our buddy Paul. He's in Boise, Idaho, one of the faithful here on this program. Paul, what are your thoughts, brother? All right, let's put Paul on hold. And let's go to Montreal, Canada, calling us on WVMT. Let's check in with Tony. Tony, go right ahead.
Well, I'm glad you took my call because we're monitoring the election in Canada.
Oh, yeah. Is your guy Carney in the lead? Did he win?
You know what they do in Canada is Atlantic Canada comes in, they start projecting, and they said it was going to be a massive landslide. All of a sudden, the popular vote is 43% Liberal and 42% Conservative, and we're at 161, 149 in seats. So all of a sudden, when the rest of Canada comes in the West, Alberta is completely blue, Conservative. So we're hoping for a Conservative victory here because we need it. We need that.
That's great. That's good. I got to tell you, I don't know much about Canadian politics. What I hear from you, what I hear from Ezra Levant, but I got the inclination, and I've always had the inclination that you guys are similar to us in that way, where for years you've been outnumbered, right? With the media, with the CBC, and with just a whole lot of liberals. And maybe the times are changing and the tides are shifting. And I'd love to see that win. What do you think the likelihood is, Tony?
I think right now it's going to be the best we can hope for is a minority government. Because you need 172 seats. They're at the 161. They're right now projecting 43% liberal vote and 42. But you're exactly right. The exact thing that's happening in the United States between Republicans and Democrats is happening here in Canada. It's the same thing that happened in Europe, in Italy, and other in Hungary. So the conservative movement is now regaining momentum, but we're still not there. And the problem is that we have the leftists, and you're right, the CBC and the CTV that are paid millions of dollars by the Liberal government to support them. These are all, the CBC is a national broadcasting organization that's funded by the federal government, and CTV received over $250 million as a donation to keep their labor standards up. In other words, don't fire your staff. But yet they ended up firing their staff anyway, keeping the money. So they're never going to be against the government. Look, we need a guy like you in Canada. I would love to be on the radio like you, like getting out the word. But that's why there's a lot of Canadians listening to you. You have to understand there is no conservative radio, and what you're saying is not only applying to the United States; it applies in Canada.
Yeah. Well, listen, brother. Thank you for saying that, and I'm going to add a little bit more Canada research to my show prep, and maybe I'll go visit you guys so I could learn the lay of the land. Because we definitely don't want to leave any patriots that are listening to the program hanging and bore you with Gavin Newsom when I could be making fun of your guy Carney, right? I love making fun of a good liberal. So anyway, Tony, thanks for the call, brother. I got to pause right here, but we're coming right back. More calls with you guys. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company for the next few minutes. Let's go to Sandy. She's in Bonners Ferry, Idaho. KBOI is what I believe is going on here. Let's check in with Sandy. Go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. My name is Sandy. I'm calling from North Idaho, and I'm listening to your show. I love you. I listen to you all the time.
Thank you.
But I have to say, there is much more important things going on than sex and drugs and raids, what you're just talking about a few minutes ago. I was listening to a shortwave radio program with a friend of mine from West Virginia, and there's, I guess, this, I've never heard of the guy before, but his last name is Turner, and his first name begins with an H. And he was talking about what's going on in India and Pakistan right now. Are you aware of anything?
I know Pakistan's on high alert. The defense minister is talking about an imminent attack on India, and they're talking about potentially using nukes. But my understanding of this has always been that the reason each of these countries has nukes, because they were both once India, is exactly so that they won't have this type of fight. Now, ultimately, I know this is 26 people died last week. There was a whole thing, and this is like retaliation for that. That's as much as I know, which isn't a lot. Maybe we'll get some foreign policy analyst on to talk about it and give us the scoop. But if I had to guess, nothing's going to happen. That's just my guess. Let's see if I'm right or wrong. Sandy, thanks for the call. God bless you, America. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm Rich Valdez. Hasta la próxima.